I'm John Travis in Novato, California on the 21st of May, 2020, talking to Dr. Rav in Littleton, Colorado. I'm glad to meet you and look forward to finding out more about you, who you are and why, what makes you tick, where you were born, how you grew up, what influences led you to, first of all, medicine, and then the type of medicine that you are so well known for. So take it away, Dr. Rav.
Well, I grew up with a radiologist father who started his career as a GP, and all of his friends were GPs. And when I, at the age of 12, let go of my dream of becoming an NFL quarterback, I decided that I needed to find something else to trigger that passion, and I would often listen to the conversations that my dad and his friends, and my uncle was a GP, and they often talked about their patients, and I could just tell from the nature of the conversation that there was such heartfelt caring for these patients, as if they were members of the family. Mm-hmm. And they served their patients as not only as healers, but as a friend, mm-hmm. counselors, marriage counselors, rabbis, ministers. I mean, they wore all these hats, and and they had such enthusiasm for their job. I mean, it was clear that they loved their job. So that became my my replacement for the NFL. I gave up on. I had a great arm, but I was short and skinny. So I had to find something else. So that was my my introduction into medicine. So I was always very competitive young man, and there was no winning and losing in the healthcare arena. So my ambition became to become the best GP I could be. And at the time I started med school, I went to the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine in 1968. At the time, less than 2% of the MD graduates were becoming GPs. In fact, they were encouraged not to become GPs because there was too much to know to be a good general practitioner. So they were encouraged to become specialists. And the osteopathic school was exactly the opposite. They about 75% of their graduates went into general practice. So and they were
a number of medical schools to find this out, or how did you know that at that early stage?
Well, there was an acute shortage of GPs at the time.
And they hadn't started the family practice residencies yet.
No, it was right after I got out. And I graduated in '72 and began a family practice you know, so in order to address this shortage of GPs, they created a new specialty, family practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became a pioneer in this new specialty. I did a 3-year residency in at Mercy Medical Center in Denver, and I was living my dream. Here I was, starting a new life as a GP, and I had a new family. My daughter was born the day that the residency was to begin. She was born in Philadelphia, and as a result, I missed the first few days of my residency.
Oh.
So I started a solo practice in Denver, on the outskirts of Denver. Actually, it was the Columbine area, 2 blocks from Columbine High School.
Wow.
And in '75, and in 1980, I developed a case of chronic sinusitis.
Oh, that's a big part of your story. But before we go there, I want to back up and fill in a little more detail on where you were born, where your family was, siblings, earliest childhood, and what led you to the NFL dream.
Well, I grew up in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. So you went back home or you stayed in yeah.
I stayed for medical school, and we had season tickets to the Philadelphia Eagles. So I grew up watching Norm Van Brocklin and Sonny Jurgensen and these great quarterbacks. And I was a good quarterback. So that
was that high school? You were
no, I didn't play in high school. I lost my
oh, you said age 12. Yeah,
at age 12.
Yeah.
I in 7th grade, I went out for football, and I got killed. I mean, I was way too short and skinny.
Mm.
So
now, siblings, what do you have any siblings, and where were you in the birth order?
I was the first child of 3.
Uh-huh.
And
brothers, sisters?
Yeah, sister, and then a younger brother.
Oh,
he was 3rd. And we were all 3 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
What else can I tell you about my childhood? I just was really immersed in medicine. My father was a workaholic, but he loved his job. I mean, he identified with that was his identity, being a physician.
I'm curious. You said he then became a radiologist. What led?
Yes, he after World War II, he started a radiology residency at Jefferson.
Uh-huh.
And later taught there.
On general practice, or what?
Pardon me?
Did he burn out on general practice?
Not really. He was a GP before he went to the war, and when he came back, it seemed like many of his friends were going into specialties.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the age of specialization. It began
Yeah.
after the war, and he he gravitated to radiology. He loved physics and math,
Hmm.
um, and he was really I often describe him as a very black and white thinker, and he was raised as an Orthodox Jew and very religious background, and here was a field that was totally black and white.
Yeah. Interesting.
So he was a pretty rigid guy, but he sure loved the medical profession,
Hmm.
and I loved him, and I I really I idolized him. I
You mentioned the conversations with other GPs. That would have been earlier when you were a lot younger, before he specialized,
no,
or he still did with once his.
well, the conversations with the GPs occur well throughout my childhood.
Hmm.
You know, both before and after I was 12.
Hmm.
But I didn't pay as much attention prior to the age of 12. I was looking ahead and, you know, feeling like, you know, I felt I needed to find something
Hmm.
that I could really enjoy. And, you know, and I saw this, my father and his friends and my uncle, they loved their job.
Hmm.
And
Probably the
it,
fact that their patients loved them, which was my experience with my father's general practice of seeing all the attention that he got from his patient family.
oh
Um,
yeah,
that replaced a lot of the attention I didn't get or we didn't get because he was so busy with his patients, plus the fact that during the war the other doctor got drafted and he was rejected because of a short leg, and he did
oh,
double duty, so we hardly ever saw him.
oh.
Small town with, you know, two and a half doctors. Now, what interest did you have in high school and college? Where did you go to college? And
I went to Temple University in Philadelphia,
mm-hmm. Science
and
major or what?
I was a biology major, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, that was always my favorite course throughout high school as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, prior to your losing your football hobby, or afterwards, other hobbies that you had, or
Um, I Well, I played varsity tennis throughout high school, the four years of high school.
mm,
I was captain of the tennis team. I loved the outdoors, camping and
mm-hmm.
um, hiking, and so Colorado was really like a big playground for me.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, I love it here. I've been here almost 50 years, and I still have no regrets about leaving the East Coast.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of osteopathic school, you got a lot of things that we didn't get in conventional medical training, or you did in those days. I'm not sure how much of that's left. How much did that influence you?
Well, it's very interesting. Um, you know, from day one, we were taught they called it the concept was the totality of man, and we were taught that when you evaluate a new patient, that you take into account their mental and emotional and spiritual status to help determine why they became ill.
What a novel idea for a
And I thought, well, geez, that just seems like common sense to me. Wouldn't any good doctor do that? And
no, not anymore.
and I later realized that they were not taught anything about that in allopathic schools, and and yet the rest of our training, I mean, they they essentially paid it lip service. We really were not taught how to care for the whole person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and started this residency, and the family practice textbook, the brand new the new specialty by Rakel and Cohn. Robert Rakel wrote in that book that the family practitioner should treat the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. And once again, we were not taught how to do almost the entirety of the residency was spent diagnosing and treating disease.
Mm-hmm.
So we were told to treat the whole person, but never trained how to do that. And that became my mission after I practiced holistic medicine on myself in healing my chronic sinusitis and discovering a level of health that I'd never experienced before. I realized that this was right on. This is really what I was supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And this is what all family practitioners were supposed to be doing. If not all physicians.
Yeah.
You know, this is the business of caring. And what has happened is it's become so much more of a business with a whole lot less caring.
I always remember when I met David Rakel, and is he Robert's son? Are they related?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
David is Robert's son.
I met David about 10 years ago, and I quoted him from saying he was taught to listen to a patient long enough to attach a medication to their symptoms. It's like, wow, there it is.
That's right. And here is Robert's son.
Interesting.
No, David is a terrific doctor.
Yeah, I interviewed him since then, and been very encouraged by what he sees unfolding. It's great. So now this was a major life event for you with the sinusitis. So let's get into the details of what and how. And
well, I was 5 years into my family practice, and I'd been getting sinus infections, maybe 2 or 3 a year, and they were becoming more frequent. So I consulted with my ENT, and he said, I can offer you surgery. I can't really guarantee that it will cure the problem. And I said, well, why would I want to do surgery then? He said, well, it's your only option. He said, you're going to have to live with it. I said, so I left his office. I said to him, there's no way in the world I'm going to live with this for the rest of my life. I was 33 years old. It was making my life miserable. So I began doing a natural treatment. I mean, it seems odd to call them alternatives, but I would change my diet. I was spraying my nose with saline, and I was improving. I mean, the first thing I did was to eliminate the my evening bowl of ice cream,
Mm.
and it made a huge difference in the amount of mucus and congestion. But I still had the problem. I was still getting sinus infections, and I still had drainage, postnasal, and I was irritable, and it affected my energy level, and I just really was very unhappy with this condition. So in 1984, I read the transcript of a talk given by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, at the time, she was considered medicine's leading authority on the subjects of death and dying. And I was immediately attracted by the title of her lecture, Death Does Not Exist. And after 20 some years of research, she concluded that there is no death. All that dies is a physical shell housing an immortal soul, and that our time here in these bodies is a very, very brief part of our total existence, and that our primary purpose while we're here is to learn to love. And she concluded the talk by stating that the only thing I know that truly heals people is unconditional love.
Mm.
Well, I was just, I was blown away by the whole thing. I mean, I must have reread that article 10 times. And I just couldn't dismiss it. And the more I read it, the more it rang true for me and in my own life experience. So, and shortly after, within a year of reading that, I read Bernie Siegel's book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
And I was even more inspired by this Yale professor of surgery who's talking about these miraculous healings by teaching people to love themselves. So I was hooked. And it was just this series of events, and right after, almost immediately after finishing the book, I found out about a spiritual psychotherapist who lived really close to me, and I made an appointment, and I worked with this man for a full year. And he basically taught me to love myself in body, mind, and soul.
Wow.
And I cured my sinusitis. It was gone by 1987.
Mm.
And that was the beginning of this current chapter in my life. So it's been 33 years. I made a commitment at that point. And really the commitment was solidified by 1990 when I wrote the WellBe Health Plan, which is the precursor for the company Fully Alive. which is what I've been developing for the last 30 years, since 1990.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now, as we speak, in the process of writing the business plan because the time is right. This was the vehicle that I foresee as changing healthcare.
Mm.
My commitment in 1990 was to transform healthcare and based on the belief that unconditional love is life's most powerful healer. And I joined with Bob Anderson. Both of us were on the board of the AHMA in 1993 in Kansas City at the AHMA board meeting. And there we developed the principles of practice for holistic medicine. And we both agreed strongly that unconditional love was the basis for all healing. And
I want to go into you and Bob and how you got connected. But first of all, what you've done is reminded me that I had one episode of sinusitis the winter of, I think it was 88 or 89. And I had a breakthrough experience taking a shower of realizing that I was suppressing grief, that I hadn't been crying, and crying has always been hard for me since childhood. And it suddenly cleared. So I connected it for me with unexpressed grief. I also noticed that I would get colds if I had something that I was suppressing, like suppressing tears. So not loving myself enough to allow my feelings free reign.
that's right.
The model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
well, unshed tears is definitely one of the problems with the brow, the third eye chakra.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's one of the main issues in the tissue, but self-evaluation is at the top of that list.
Yeah.
Of issues of that, and it's this sixth chakra that's connected to the sinuses.
Mm.
So that's a lot of the work that I did during that year with the therapist.
Interesting. Say a little more about what you did with him, specific to chakras and physical correlates, or what?
Well, he helped me to appreciate. Well, he taught me about the chakra system,
mm-hmm.
And he helped me to release the blockage in the chakras, and especially in the sixth and the heart chakra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was very intense work.
I imagine.
But it changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never, it changed my personal and professional life forever. You know, I could never see practicing the same way again. Mm-hmm. He also told me that I had the most powerful healing touch that he'd ever experienced. And so He helped me uncover this hidden gift that I would never have known about.
Mm-hmm.
And I've since become certified as a healing touch practitioner as well. I mean, the whole realm of energy medicine,
Yeah.
he opened up to me. And so it's, and I saw just miraculous healings with this healing touch. Uh, in 87, shortly after I finished my work with him, on one of my many trips to Fiji, that's another long story, but um, I have frequently visited a remote village in Fiji, and learned that their traditional Fijian medicine is combines herbs and touch.
Mm.
And every family in Fiji has at least one member of that family has what they call in Fijian the gift, and the gift is a healing touch. And I became familiar with this healing touch before I was told I had this talent. And I had, on my first trip to Fiji, I had a stomach disorder. I mean, I really was uncomfortable and I had terrible indigestion. And they called in the stomach guy, the stomach man, and
The
the
special.
specialist. And he said a prayer. He lightly touched my abdomen for a few minutes, and it was gone.
Mm.
I mean, I just it was like I was on a different planet.
Wow.
And then it was within a year, well, 2 years later, was when I discovered that I had this ability myself, as
Mm-hmm.
we all do. I mean, just like, anybody can learn to play the piano, but some people have a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, that's one of mine. I don't use it much right now, but that was another reason I knew that I could never practice medicine as I had previously.
Yeah. When I hear healing touch, I think of Dee Krieger and the nurses. And were you connected with that?
Well, Dee Krieger started therapeutic touch.
That's right. Healing, yeah, therapy. Yeah.
Very similar,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, this is Janet Menken
All right. Yeah.
started healing touch.
I didn't know her. I did run into Dee Krieger once, but yeah, they're both dead, so can't
Yeah.
interview them. I would love to. So did you get training in it through?
Yes, I did. Finally, when the training program started in the late 90s, in '01, I started the training with Healing Touch Level 1, and I went through Level 5 and became certified
Mm-hmm.
in '05.
Okay. Well,
But
going back to after your sessions in healing the sinusitis, how did it impact your practice? Tell me more about the specifics of your practice influence.
well, um, what it did was it allowed me to leave family practice. In June of '86, after starting, well, let's back up to 1983. In '83, I expanded my solo family practice to a minor emergency center family practice combination.
Mm-hmm.
And we were open. This was right at the beginning of what were called minor ERs at the time, which today are the urgent care centers. But I was open 7 days a week, 13 hours a day from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I eventually hired we had 5 family physicians staffing the place, but I was the administrator as well as trying to be a family doctor. And it was overwhelming. I mean, we were super successful.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great model, and but it was killing me. I mean, my sinuses were awful.
Mm-hmm.
Because I hold myself to a high standard of performance, and I was performing in too many arenas here. I was a business administrator, and I was a family doctor and personnel director, and it was too much. So I sold the practice to Porter Hospital, one of the part of the network of the Seventh-day Adventist chain of hospitals. I think they had at the time, the 4th largest network of hospitals in the world. And I became the medical director. So, and this was June of '86. And shortly after I cured my sinusitis, which was in the spring of '87, in August of '87, I had a meeting with the CEO of the hospital. And I had a 2-year contract to be medical director of Columbine Medical Center, my practice, which was now theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So he asked for a meeting with me, and in the meeting he asked me, well, do you enjoy what you're doing? You know, would you like to be doing that? I said, well, no, I'd rather be practicing holistic medicine. And he said, well, you know, Rob, our hospital is owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I said, yeah, I'm aware of that. He said, well, our church believes that God plays a big part in the healing process. I said, oh, and I got real excited. I thought, well, oh, he's speaking my language here.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, that's just what we're talking about. He said, the board would never go for this. I said, well, isn't every member of your board an Adventist? He said, yeah, every one of them. I said, well, you just told me that your church is totally compatible with the philosophy of holistic medicine. He said, you are not going to be able to do it here. So I resigned on the spot.
Mm.
So that was the end of my conventional family practice. And as I left, I said, I believe this will become mainstream within the next decade. And he just laughed. He laughed and said, "Not in my lifetime."
Hmm. Is he still alive?
That was my. I'm not sure if he's still alive. I'm always off on my timing.
Yeah,
I never get it right. But it's happening.
definitely.
It's definitely happening
Yeah,
because it's good medicine. This is all good medicine. That's all.
yeah,
I mean, it's osteopathic medicine. It's the medicine of Hippocrates, for goodness sakes. I mean, this is nothing new.
yeah. The turning of the wheel.
That's right.
So now, had you and heard of the word holism at that point? That's about when, I mean, AHMA was started in '78. What was your connection and when with AHMA?
Well, holism. I realized I was taught holism in osteopathic school,
Mm-hmm.
but I never was comfortable or really understood what spiritual meant. I always thought I always equated it with religion.
Mm-hmm.
But now I realize that it doesn't have to have anything to do with religion. Um, and I finished reading Bernie Siegel's book. And at the time that I read it, he was the president of the AHMA. And I finished reading the book, and I think within minutes or hour, it was the same day, I think, I joined the AHMA.
Mm-hmm. So that was late '80s, I believe he was.
That was in '88.
Yeah.
September of '88, I joined the AHMA and then was invited on the board by Bill Manahan in '91.
Mm-hmm.
And as I told you, it was in '90 that I committed to transforming healthcare, and I needed a vehicle to do that. And whatever the vehicle would be, it would have to be based on science. And so I needed a strong, solid scientific foundation. And that was my impetus for joining the AHMA. That here were a group of holistic doctors, and the science was there. It just had to be collected, and that's what Bob Anderson did. He brought together he put together he called it the scientific basis for holistic medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a 4,000 plus references. We called it Bob's Big Book.
Yes, I've heard about it. I've never actually seen it. Is it on a website, or how accessible is it? I should put a link to that in our narrative.
I'm not sure. I mean, I have a copy, but
was it published as a regular book, or was it just?
No, it was not.
Yeah, seems like it should be on a website or something. We'll investigate that. Now, you met Bob through AHMA, I assume? And...
Yes, I did. He was on the board when I joined the board.
Mm-hmm. And now, Bill, you also met that way. I've gotten to know Bill pretty well.
Yeah, Bill, actually, I met Bill. I joined the AHMA in '88. I went to my first meeting in early '89, and shortly after that meeting, Bill invited me to, it was in '90. Bill invited me to direct the next the '91 annual AHMA conference.
Oh,
And so I, I planned it for Breckenridge, Colorado,
mhm.
and the people who attended loved it, but we had a lot of complaints. I thought it was a great setting for a holistic conference, seeing as if, or as a result of the previous two AHMA conferences I had attended, the only two, were held at the Seattle Airport Hilton.
Yeah, I know. I was at the '90 one. Edgar
Oh, you
Mitchell was
were?
there. Yeah,
Oh,
I had just published Wellness for Helping Professionals, and I was touting that. And I think um, Patch Adams was there, and
yes.
Edgar Mitchell, and Chris Northrup. I met all them.
Bowen White was there. Bowen White and
Yeah,
Patch were running around in their clown outfits, and I saw them in '89 at my first AHMA conference, and I kept questioning myself. These guys are all doctors, you know? And I just I really it was like no other medical conference I'd ever been to. So that was my initiation into the AHMA.
so did you have resistance that Breckenridge is too hard to get to, or what was the?
Well, people said this is not appropriate for an AHMA conference. We had a low attendance, but the people who attended loved it.
Yeah, getting out of a hotel, like our national wellness conferences were always on this campus at Stevens Point, Wisconsin. It was like summer camp, and then they moved them to a hotel or to the University of Minnesota, and completely lost that feeling that you know you get when you've got more of a camp like or having fun as opposed to being stuck in these big ugly rooms.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
So that was my uh, and then at the '93 AHMA board meeting in Kansas City was when Bob first proposed to the board the principles of practice.
mm-hmm.
And his original list had love is our is our strongest medicine. Is one of our strongest medicines.
Mm-hmm.
So the list was approved, and I went back to my room, and I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, well, geez, if love is one of the strongest medicines, what are the others? So I came back the next day and talked to I guess it was Peter Albright was the president, and I said, well, if it's one of, what are the others? I think it should be love is our most powerful medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, yeah, if you can get everybody else to agree to that change, then we'll go with it. So I went to every board member, and they all agreed, except Alan Gaby. He agreed afterwards, but I said, if it's one of, what are the others? He said, well, steroids, of course. He has a great sense of humor, Alan David.
What's the word? I missed it.
Steroids.
Oh, steroids.
Uh, so so it became so the principle became unconditional love is life's most powerful healer.
Yeah. Did you come up with some others that were in that ilk, or steroids the best you could do?
No, no, that was Alan's
Yeah.
idea, but he went along with it. He recognized he really is a funny guy. You'll enjoy talking to him
Yeah.
if he agrees to an interview.
Did you expand the list then with any others, or was that?
No, that was well, I expanded on that one to include the corollary of that, and that is that the perceived loss of love is our greatest health risk.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you describe your own childhood and your workaholic GP father who didn't have time for you, you perceived that as a loss of love.
Mm-hmm.
And you grieved over it, that. And perceived is a key word here.
Yeah.
Because he loved you, but to the best of his ability at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Just like my father was a workaholic, and I got very little from him other than his modeling.
Mm-hmm.
He loved medicine, and I followed the lead.
Mm-hmm. So now you've escaped from the practice. You've sold it and gotten out, and you're connected with the organized holistic folks. What were you doing this was prior to your 1990 commitment. What were you doing for a day job after you shed
I basically was living off of the money that I got from the sale of my practice to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing some patients, very few, in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And but making very little. Sent my two daughters to private school. My wife went to graduate school and got her MSW, and she's now a marriage and family therapist and does mostly individual work now.
Mm-hmm.
But
besides seeing patients, were you cooking up your ideas for the eventual project in 1990?
Oh yeah. Actually, I created with the therapist that I worked with. I have right here. I'm sending him this for his 80th birthday this fall. This is our brochure. This was the original fully alive medicine. We called it Integrated Health Associates. And there, my logo, if you can see the heart with the caduceus in the center.
And you developed that in the 80s?
And that was in the late 80s. Yeah, that was 88, 89.
And now you were working on your first book, I assume, around then too?
Well, I was. 87 is when I started work on sinus survival.
Mm-hmm.
I was determined to get the word out that no, you don't have to live with this,
mm-hmm.
which is what all the ENTs were telling patients. Because they first recommended surgery, and most people followed suit, but the surgery usually doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's too bad. I mean, and it still goes on. This is 30 years later,
Yeah.
and it's not much different.
Yeah. So when was the book published?
The book was published in '88, the November of '88, and we've sold almost 500,000 copies since, four different editions.
Well, that's good.
And I still get sinus patients. Not very many now, but because the program still works. I mean, I've been modifying it and refining and improving the program for over 30 years now.
Mm. So we're up to 1990, and your big commitment that's coming to a business plan. Let's fill in those 30 years.
Well, that's well, from 1990. Well, actually, 93 was when I joined with Bob, and we really spearheaded. I mean, both of us were committed to the same goal of creating a strong scientific foundation for holistic medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So in 96, Bob got the 501c3 for the American Board of Holistic Medicine.
Right.
And the two of us created the board certification, which with the exam was first given in 2000. So from 2000 to 2015, we certified over 3,000 physicians.
Wow, that many.
Yeah, representing almost every specialty.
Mm.
I mean,
So
our original goal,
you and he cooked up most of the
happy with what?
You and he cooked up most of the questions of the exam, or
well, we had an exam committee. No,
Uh-huh.
we had a committee, and Lev Linkner was an important member of that committee. You should interview him because he was an inspiration to me as well. He was I felt like he was the quintessential holistic family physician.
Good.
And he was a founding member of the AHMA.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been president had he not been so busy with his practice, which he still is. He just turned 70. I'm assuming you and I are about the same age. You're in your 70s?
77, and I was at the founding meeting in Denver when Norm
78.
and Gladys set it up, but then I couldn't continue because I couldn't afford the dues, not having a practice. So I was kind of in and out. I did come to the 90 meeting, but I don't remember meeting Lev if he was there, but I've heard his name enough, and I'll certainly track him down.
Yeah, he's in Ann Arbor.
Okay.
So Bob actually created it was his own funds that made it possible for us to do that first ABHM review course
Mm-hmm.
in Denver in 2000. And we had over four, let's see, about 450 attendees and 275 people took the exam.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it started in 2000. Then by 2006, when Lee Lipsenthal became president, and he invited Mimi Garneri to
Mm-hmm.
join the board. He also changed the name to Integrative Holistic Medicine
Mm-hmm.
because he felt, and he was probably right, that holistic was a turnoff to a lot of physicians.
Yeah.
The word was not a good one. So integrative was the most popular word. I mean, when you think about it, when you go back to 93 or 92, I think was the NIH Office of Alternative Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So from alternative, we went to complementary medicine and then CAM,
Mm-hmm.
and functional medicine became popular, and holistic. That's why I now call it fully alive medicine.
Mm-hmm. And
And
Gladys has an interesting term that's similar. I'm trying to think of what she called.
yeah, it's living medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is similar. I like the acronym FAM,
Yeah.
and I call it the family medicine of the 21st century
Good one.
because it really does combine the specialties of integrative holistic medicine with family medicine.
Yeah. So it then eventually evolved into the current larger. You connected it up with I'm not remembering the terminology, but the certifying body now is the larger, more recognized grouping.
Well, it's the American Board of Integrative Medicine.
But it's part of that larger certifying body of a lot of different specialties. So I'm trying to remember the name.
Oh, the American Board of Medical Specialties,
Yeah, that's the
ABMS.
right, the
So
umbrella organization.
I didn't realize that it was approved by the ABMS.
Yeah, I thought that was in the last few years.
No.
I get confused by the word salad of all the.
Yeah, no, I do too. And so does the public. You know, it's so interesting with all these words, alternative and complementary and functional and anti-aging. I mean, no one really can define any of those terms. But when I use the word, the term fully alive medicine, people can relate. Oh yeah, I'd like to be fully alive. I mean, it's
good point. Yeah.
you know, it's understandable. I just, it's great to have all these different words, but if it doesn't have much meaning to the public,
Mm-hmm.
what good is it really? Because that's what we're here for.
Yeah. So now, while all of this was evolving and the certification was growing, and you were on the ground floor of that, what else were you up to with your development? And were you still seeing any patients or your practice?
I was always seeing patients. I never stopped.
Uh-huh.
And most of them were sinus patients. And I would spend 2 or 3 hours with, with each patient
Mm.
per session. And it was a 3 to 4 month program that I would teach. And we'd have, it encompassed 4 sessions, each about a month, 6 weeks apart. And it was, it was a small practice, but it kept me going, along with the advances that I was getting on my books.
Mm-hmm.
I published the Thriving, men's health book, the a holistic guide. What did the complete mind body guide for holistic. I forget the subtitle. Thriving, the complete mind body guide for optimal health and fitness for men. This
Ah,
was 97.
uh-huh.
And it was not well received. The most of the people who bought it seemed to be women who were buying it for their husbands.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
Men were only had a problem if they couldn't get erections.
exactly. Yeah.
And
Thriving
that was
erections, that would be a good title.
and then they were thriving.
Yeah. So,
And then I published with Bob as a co-author the complete guide to holistic medicine, the complete self-care guide to holistic medicine. And that's what I emphasized in all my books. I tried to teach people to do it themselves.
mm-hmm. Now you've got the word holistic in the title. Was this prior to it winding down, or how was that received?
That was a little bit better received, but I didn't sell many other books other than the Sign of Survival, because in 2000 I did a whole series of survival guides, and I did the 4th edition of Sign of Survival, and asthma survival, and arthritis, and back pain, and headache survival. So it was a series of 5, and they, the problem is with all of those problems, there are conventional treatments that help to relieve the symptoms, that are effective.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of the side effects and the downside, they did work.
But not with sinusitis.
But not with sinuses. And that's why the sinus book.
Yeah.
And
You got to
I learned a lot.
The problem.
Yeah. But so then then I went quite a while without a new book until 2017. I wrote Cannabis for Chronic Pain.
Right. That's
what I've been spending most of my time doing since 2011. I've been primarily a cannabis clinician, and most of my patients have chronic pain and are using medical marijuana. And interestingly enough, the 3 most effective conditions treated with cannabis are back pain, arthritis, and migraine headache. And so I have books on all 3 of them. So I I help my patients not only with the use of cannabis, but also the techniques that I have written about in the books.
Mm.
So I get to use the books or the material in the books, and it's been fun. I've enjoyed this practice.
And of course, Colorado was one of the first states to legalize it, so you had a
Yeah,
lead there with the
that's right.
ability. Yeah.
Yeah, but the medical marijuana is really disappearing. It's really been the number of medical marijuana patients has been reduced dramatically
Why is that?
because we have legal recreational marijuana now since
And
2014.
so they're just replacing the source, or what?
Well, they're not seeing a need. The dispensaries that sell the medical marijuana now have become uh, uh, dispensaries for both medical and recreational.
Mm-hmm.
And since most of their business is on the recreational side, the selection of products is much weaker on the
Oh,
medical side. So the medical patients can't get the products that they're used to getting, and they've just decided not to renew their medical card.
uh-huh. So what are they doing with?
They're just buying the recreational on the recreational side, and
And
it costs more because there's a greater sales tax.
yeah, is it working as well for them, or what are the
Yeah,
various?
yeah, it works as well.
Uh-huh. Is this for smoking purposes, or eating, or oils, or?
No, it's for all of them.
Uh-huh.
I I I recommend to all my patients that they don't inhale.
Uh-huh. Smart. Now here in California, like in Marin County, my partner has arthritis and back pain, and she's been getting tinctures and lotions, but through an outfit that will deliver it. They don't actually have any storefronts in Marin.
Mhm.
You have to call up and then they deliver it. So we haven't got the level of freedom, and hopefully the product range is still there. I don't know if that's across the board or just in Colorado that the, they aren't making the medical specialized products anywhere, or are they just not available in Colorado?
Are so the question is the specialized products?
Yeah, like the ones in California are specifically medically oriented. Are the is the range, has it decreased here as well? I don't know to compare it. You're saying that a lot of the products have been discontinued there.
Well, no, they're not discontinued. They're just shifted from the medical side to the recreational.
uh, and they're the
They're
same product,
making
but
they're making
relabeled,
more
or?
products available on the recreational side because
Uh-huh.
that's where most of their customers come from.
Yeah, and that would be a higher THC percentage.
Um, both higher THC and higher CBD.
Oh, okay.
Jack, can I excuse myself for just a minute? I have to pee.
Sure. Let me pause the recording. Okay, we're resuming. Um, Fascinating. You're right on the leading edge of this work, and
Well, that's where I seem to gravitate to the
yeah.
leading edge. And I'm excited to report that I've been working for the last 6 months with a group of, there are 5 of us on the Fully Alive Executive Committee, and we're working on the business plan for Fully Alive because I feel like this is the time for launching Fully Alive.
And
Uh,
What's your vision of what it'll look like to the consumer?
It's going to be a national network of fully alive medical centers. Um, there will probably be about 180 centers located in the 32 states that have presently legalized medical marijuana. In the cities um, with populations of greater than 150,000.
Mm-hmm.
So in the smaller cities, 150 to 300,000, there'll be one center, and then, 300,000 to 750, there'll be two centers, and so forth. Up to, I think we have 6 centers planned for New York City. And out of the 180, California, as you know, is the most populous state in the country. There are 55 locations in of these centers, and there'll be a medical director who is board certified by the ABIHM in each center, with other physicians or practitioners, naturopaths, chiropractors, psychotherapists, body workers, and acupuncturists.
How have you identified any of these? Are they all going to be created, or will some be like Mimi's Center be one of them?
Well, have I identified what? The locations?
Yeah, who and are any of them already in existence that'll be?
No, none of them are in existence except um, my practice in Boulder, but it's not set up yet in this format. And we'll have our own fully alive insurance company, and fully alive retreats. There will be a component, fully alive education, a multimedia productions company, all under the umbrella of Fully Alive. So it'll be a holistic healthcare education company primarily.
That's an enormous project, and
Yeah.
you who got burned out with administrating your urgent care
no,
center.
I've got a lot of help on this.
And some big funding, I assume, will be coming along.
Oh yeah, yeah. See, I feel like everything that I've done that has been successful has been dependent on ideal timing.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't been the right time until now.
Mm-hmm.
Healthcare is the #1 concern for the majority of Americans. Healthcare reform will be at the top of Joe Biden's agenda for this next election. And I'd like to be positioned
Mm-hmm.
as another option for healthcare reform. And all of the proposals that we've seen so far have just given greater access to healthcare and maybe lowered costs.
And really, disease care that we're.
But it's all about disease care. That's right. It has nothing to do with health.
Mm-hmm.
So
and cover your ass with lots of testing to make sure you don't get sued.
Right. So this will be true healthcare reform.
Mm.
And will easily demonstrate successful treatment outcomes. So we'll have better outcomes and more cost-effective treatment. So we'll save money and get people healthier.
Wow.
And all based on self-care education. That's why.
Tom Ferguson would be proud of you.
Who would be?
Tom Ferguson.
Oh, I know that name. I can't remember who he is, though.
Medical Self-Care magazine. He started it at med school at Yale in the early 70s and published it through the 70s. Then he got into medical informatics, and then he died of multiple myeloma, some such, in the 90s. So sad to lose him, but he was like the first in self-care. He coined the term, and our 60 Minutes piece, he engineered that and was part of it. They featured his work. So.
Oh, well, I've been working on it for 30 years. I have a group on paper assembled, most of whom I hope will agree to join me, but I'll have a lot of help. This is way too much for one or even 5 people.
Yeah. Do you imagine that there'll be some pre-existing places that could join the network and
Oh yeah,
trade? Like,
absolutely.
I'm thinking Mimi's group has a lot of the same kinds of practitioners already, and
oh yeah, sure.
And will you how will you handle the medical marijuana component? Will that be an option in the states where it's legal? And
yeah, well, that's why I'm only doing these in states that have legalized medical marijuana, because those are the states that are clearly a bit more progressive, and would be more receptive to this idea.
Yeah. Well, we've covered pretty much the whole waterfront. Do you have any parting words of wisdom for future generations that we hope will make use of our oral history here? And
well, I guess I could say what I tell most of my prospective patients. You don't have to live with it. Whatever it is, you can heal it.
And for future docs who we hope will embrace these ideas, and maybe there'll be an organization they can join up with that you're creating.
Yes, I hope so.
Integrated system.
I think doctors have to keep in mind that the word doctor is Latin for teacher.
Yes.
And we are healers and teachers.
Yeah.
That's our job description. And so I go back to my original ambition of being the best GP I could be. And I think this Fully Alive will be the realization of that dream.
Well, more power to you, Rav. This is inspiring and ambitious, and wow.
Well, thank you.
Thanks again for joining us, and I'm going to keep in touch with the progress. So,
well, please do. I'll be happy to share.
And I'm going to track down some of the other folks that we brought up. So thank you for that too.
Okay. And thank you for the invitation for the interview.
My pleasure.
And this will be for a book that is forthcoming?
Not planning on a book. No, I think it's going to remain an archive of videos that may be edited down to shorter components, and also as a podcast so people can listen to it. But I've written enough books to know that's more than I want to tackle.
Yeah.
I think that the medium is changing now to more audiovisual than reading, though I'm very much a reader myself. So we'll see how it grows. I don't know yet. I'm just,
Yeah, people don't read books anymore.
no. Well, thanks again, Rav.
Well, you're most welcome. Thank you.
Bye.